Hello, hello, and hello. Welcome. Happy Thursday. It's almost the weekend. And shout out to everyone, East, West, Midwest, South, if you're joining us. Thank you. This is a On the Revel Can Inclusive co-created, co-founded, and co-supported production. And welcome to the community where we have real deep conversations about cannabis, hemp, and all things relating to business, policy, advocacy, and those items in between. Big shout out to everyone for joining us. Thank you for being here. If you're still filing into the conversation, that's fine. We just started. We're literally 30 seconds in. If you know a friend that was supposed to be here, tell them to get here. If they forgot, you should remind them because we're about to start in 2 minutes. And shout out to Cole Shots for sponsoring this event. We really appreciate their continued support. Again, it sucks that we cannot be together in a room. And shout out to On the Revel for promoting the classiest events in New York City with the most inclusive, on purpose audiences in the game. But we're doing this in the interim, and we are doing our best to make sure that you are still informed about what's going on because cannabis and hemp are moving and changing, and things are moving quickly. This conversation is going to be focused again on leaders in the space. These are people who are vetted, trusted, and hate to say this, but this is a no cap conversation and we are not on Clubhouse. So you are going to definitely hear from people who know what they're talking about, have been through all types of experiences. And yeah, I'm going to get started. So I'm going to ask for all the guests to show their video and give a short introduction, and that would be amazing. And I'm going to say it one more time because I haven't seen the guests unmute their show. There we go. Thank you. That's right. I'm using my teacher voice and my media training right now, and you're going to get it. You're going to love it. You're going to get it. Let's start out with Chaney, who unmuted their muted video, and please give a short introduction as to what you do. And I'll go to Lanese, and then I'll go to Jason, and then I will go to Drakari.
All right. Well, thank you, Mary, for holding it down with the hosting. Thank you On the Revel for the invite. Glad to be here with my folks. My name is Chaney Turner. I reside in Oakland, California. The founder of Cannabis, Oakland, also Beyond Equity. Currently sit on the Oakland Cannabis Commissions. I've been in the cannabis space for a little bit over 4 years. A lot of the work that I do is centered around equity and inclusion and entry for Black and marginalized folks. And I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm not gonna take up too much time, but I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Drakari, Lanese, Lanese, then Jason, then Drakari.
Hey everyone, my name's Lanese. I saw someone say they're from Long Beach, New York. Go Bulldogs, graduated class 2003. So definitely say hi to me. I am the chair of Oakland's Regulatory Cannabis Commission. I also co-founded the Hood Incubator, which seeks to leverage the legal cannabis industry to end the drug war and reverse its harms. And hi.
Thank you, Jason Starr with 2 R's.
2 R's. Hello, everyone. It's Jason Starr with 2 R's. I use he and him pronouns. I am a lawyer by trade, but an educator at heart. I'm a social movement lawyer trying to bring my legal training to bear in grassroots movements. And I've been, involved in cannabis for as long as I've been practicing, which is about 10 years now. I guess I got my start doing sort of organizing efforts on municipal decriminalization before the first legalization bill was introduced in New York, and then got dragged into state government and had the opportunity when cannabis legalization really opened up in New York to be on the government side drafting law, drafting policy. So it's really great to be here with everybody, especially all of our forebears on the West Coast, especially California. We just learned so much. So I'm hopefully gonna get a lot from hearing from Lanese and Chaney and Drakari as well. And Mary, we go back, so it's good to see you again.
Y'all, Jason got 3 degrees, small flex, but that's okay. I have 2 degrees and a certificate from Math Counts, a debate team I joined in high school. So he got 3. That means what he's saying, you should write it down because we can't afford him any other way except for this event. Drakari, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name is Drakari. I go by Dre. I am a 25-year-old San Francisco native, and I currently own and operate a cannabis dispensary in Nob Hill, known as the California Street Cannabis Company. It's my first cannabis dispensary and cannabis business, but of course I am looking to get into more. We actually were just approved to open up our second location. Hopefully we can get that open by the end of spring. But just very exciting news, and it's a blessing to be here and be on this panel with some great leaders. So
thank you so much. And big reminder, if you want to ask a question, everybody, you should know this is Zoom. We've been Zooming for almost a year. So you got to go to the QA section to ask your question. If you want to preload it in there, that's cool. I'm going to do my best to get to it. We have a lot of questions. I'm going to go rapid fire, and I am going to start off with Jason Starr with 2 R's and Chaney, given the fact that they have a really, really good experience in talking about this topic I'm going to get into. Again, if you want to ask your question, go to the QA function right next to raise your hand, right where it says share screen, record, chat, participants. We've been Zooming this whole time. I know Skype is mad because they lost out, but we Zooming. That's what we doing. Jason, let's get right to it. We're going to talk about New York just to start, because there are in the middle, in case anybody's not aware, and you can also research this on your own. New York for the CRTA, which is the Cannabis Regulation Tax Amendments, and then there's also the MRTA, which is a Marijuana Regulation Tax Amendment. Yes. They were in the middle of a 30-day amendments of the CRTA because there were responses back from people in advocacy and industry about things that were concerning. But Jason, just given the fact that you've done this, we've been in meetings, we've sat together numerous times, like you understand kind of like what that is. So when we say 30-day amendments, what does that mean for people who don't understand policy, especially during this time right now, given that New York is trying to make this happen because New Jersey is now legal and all signed as of Monday.
And Virginia.
And Alabama. Alabama's trying to pass something too in the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting and I dare say, good year for cannabis policy, at least in so far as I think there are a lot of states that I know took me by surprise, and I think took some others by surprise. And certainly what's happening at the federal level with movement that looks like a lot more possible than it did before. But to take a step back in New York, I think the first marijuana legalization bill was introduced in New York in 2013. That was a previous version of the MRTA. So this bill has been workshopped and informed by the experiences across the country, particularly from California, Colorado, Washington, and to a lesser degree, Massachusetts and Illinois. So it's been workshopped for a while. And in 2019, the governor came out with the legalization proposal. So sitting the politics out to the side, I think for the last, this will be the 3rd year that the legislature and the governor have seriously tried to get this over the finish line. And I think a lot of factors suggest that this will be the year that it can happen in New York. But to your specific question, essentially what happens in New York politics is, in state policy is, first, sometime in December, early January, the governor issues what is his executive budget. That'll also include a lot of legislation, big ticket legislative items, including marijuana legalization. And then the legislature will follow up, and they haven't done that yet, but after hearings on the budget on these big items, they'll follow up with their responses to his budget, usually in the end of February. And then the month of March is the month where reconciliation happens across the $185 billion budget. So just to give you a flavor for the kinds of things that show up in the budget, in 2019, we eliminated or virtually eliminated cash bail. and had a major pretrial discovery package. We've renegotiated the rent laws in the context of the budget. We've done a lot of big things. So even though it's his budget, a lot of big policy happens. And I think really, while the CRTA and the MRTA have gotten a lot closer, there are still major differences. And I think in three big areas. One is, what amount of conduct remains criminal, and what are those criminal penalties? The other is sort of what is the social equity program, and what does early licensing look like? How much is going to be available and reserved for social equity applicants, and how much capital is going to be put in on the front end to make sure that the businesses and entrepreneurs that need it to get early entry can actually do that. And I think the big piece is the community reinvestment, what happens to the tax revenue. And then before I flip it to Chaney, I think a bigger piece that maybe we aren't having as much of a conversation about in New York that I think is super critical is control. And what is the agency, the Office of Cannabis Management, the Cannabis Control Board, look like? Who is it accountable to? How is it staffed? How is it funded? And so I think that's the landscape. And I think people are really confident that the politics and the things are lining up in New York this year to make it happen. But I think there's the last mile is the longest, if you will, and there's still a lot of outstanding questions between now and April 1 if this is going to get done in the budget.
And so when we talk about that and change, it's given your experience being like in Oakland, which in case anybody is really aware, Oakland has a really progressive approach to equity. And California, like cannabis is definitely a thing and a culture and a movement outside of what's happening on the East Coast. So Chaney, given that you're on the commission, congratulations, and given your experience as being like a co-founder of a dispensary group, and also, understanding the policy that needs to be like really formulated to like support ownership for people that are melanated or people that don't have means. What does that look like given your experience in your role, and how are you trying to create those movements in Oakland, and what can we learn from over on the East Side?
Although, Oakland is the first city to introduce, social equity in the cannabis space, we still have a long way to go. Yes, Oakland is known as a, progressive, and I say that in quotes, as a progressive city. But yeah, we still have a lot of, I feel that we are working even harder than previous, because there were things that were passed in regulation that still isn't equitable, right? So a lot of the work that, Lanese, myself, and other groups and advocates have been doing. In 2019, we led an effort to, lower the tax rates because the city just looks at, cannabis as this cash cow and want to, charge these exuberant tax rates when majority of the cannabis operations that we have are small businesses. So the taxes needed to be lowered for these small businesses in order for them to be able, for one, to stay in business, and also, in order for them to scale. We won that victory. It still wasn't lowered to the percentage that we felt, is truly equitable, but it's better, than having nothing at all. We have currently, we are meeting and working side by side with our, city council members to look at, our budget, the revenue that, taxes is bringing in, and how we can, strengthen the program so that these small operations can continue, to be successful. And then there's still a lot of work to do, on a state level, as far as people getting access to licenses, having certain fees and things waived so that people can, enter the space. We want to make it more the access to entry much easier, so that we have people, like Drakari and operations that are owned by, young Black entrepreneurs. So again, we're doing a great job, but there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. And hopefully other cities, especially as these states, legalize, hopefully they can look at what we're doing here as a blueprint, at the wins, and also, some of the struggles that we're still, fighting for. But overall, I feel that, the program is very healthy. We have a new workforce development program that where people can get paid training on how to, enter the space, and that's a win-win for everyone. We also have a new equity kitchen that has opened as well. That's a partnership with the city of Oakland, and also Supernova Women, who's working on that. And so I'm proud of what Oakland is doing, but it's not enough. And I'm grateful to be in this space with people who are working hard to make sure that not Oakland only can be successful, but we can be successful so that other cities and states can follow suit and be successful.
So then Jason and Chaney, you can both tag team on this, or just one person can answer efficiently, hey, how does someone reach out to you? Like, how do I prepare myself to speak to someone like you in regards to my concerns or my needs? Like when we're testifying, when we're now doing these things on Zoom apparently, or when we're doing selective people that can come to a state capitol or to a meeting. How does one prepare themselves when it comes to reading a bill, understanding the language, and meeting with someone like you, or reaching out to someone like you who cares about these issues? Jason, you can answer one, or Chaney, you can answer one. I know Chaney, by the way, y'all, Chaney's busy. Chaney has a meeting at 7:45 our time, Eastern time. So I'm trying to lead up with these like government related questions early. So yeah, if someone's late and they didn't join, too bad. Tell them to get in here. This is what we're doing. Jason, go ahead.
Well, I actually defer to Chaney first, because Chaney's an actual commissioner. And I'm interested to hear, how does one prepare to be effective? For you, Chaney, and then I'll follow up with some thoughts.
Yeah, well, our meetings, our commissioner meetings are public, just like any other city meeting. And so folks can, now we're in the world of Zoom, people can join via Zoom, because all city meetings are held via Zoom currently. But when we reopen and get back to business, people can attend those publicly. And it's important, Lanese and I sit on the commissions together, and it could be more community and, people who are operating, that can attend. I know folks have, stuff going on and everyone can't attend a meeting, but that's the easiest way. But before being on the commissions, when I was on, the other side, I've always been active in community. I attend my local city council meetings. I know what's going on in my city. I know who my elected officials are. And so it's the same for, cannabis. We would show up. We were, quote unquote, lobbying for ourselves, and taking a lot of these issues that we saw with the cannabis program or cannabis in general directly to our city council members. And people can reach out to, and I can only speak for Oakland, I can't speak for any other cities, but, people can ask questions at the meetings, and reach out, but we're not certified employees of the city. So I don't have like a, City of Oakland email address where you can reach out. You can reach out to your local district council person. They can, bring it up to, commissions, but the best way to get involved is to be in their face, because actually we know more than they do. If you're in the cannabis space, doesn't matter if you have a title or whatnot. If you've been on the unregulated market, you know what you need, right? You know what you need if you want to get out of that space. If you're on the regulated market, you know what you need in order for you to be successful. The elected officials, they don't know that. We spend a good amount of our time. I mean, some of these people don't even know the revenue that tax is bringing in, that cannabis is bringing in, to the city. And so how can they make decisions if they don't know? That's where we come in to really explain why certain things might need to be lowered, or why this certain facet of the program isn't working and needs to be amended. But that goes for a local and state level and federal level. So get involved, tell your people what you need, what you want the cannabis space to look like, or how do you want the cannabis space to be more accessible for you and people who look like you to enter.
Jason, any thoughts on your end, just given the East Coast differentials?
Yeah, I mean, I co-sign and agree with everything that Chaney said. I think I would add, have knowledge of the community that, if it's an elected official, if it's an appointed person, sort of know what their responsibilities are, what level of influence and control. Do a little bit of power analysis. If you're looking at meeting with your local elected officials, your state elected officials, find the pressure points. And, maybe if you're an industry or an entrepreneur and not an advocate or a policy person, it might be helpful to kind of connect with the advocates that are doing that work in your location or jurisdiction. They have a good landscape of where pressure points you may not sort of think. People think, oh, well, the governor has a proposal, I'm going to try to get, with the governor's office. And it's like, well, maybe there's a lower hanging piece of fruit, which is Jason. And maybe Jason knows somebody from the outside and they have a relationship of trust. And so I think that it's helpful to kind of do some of that and know, a little bit of power mapping. And I think the other thing is relationships, long-term relationships, not transactional relationships. Because as Chaney mentioned, right, they just went back and tweaked the tax piece in order to try to open it up, bring the cost down, make it more equitable, et cetera. That's going to happen in New York and elsewhere. We're going to have a bill. It's going to be huge, 400 and something pages, and it's going to take a long time to implement. And then as soon as you get into it, people are going to come say, wait a minute, no, that's not right. Or we forgot about this, or we actually need to pull that back. And when you have a continuity of a real relationship with those folks, again, not just the elected official or the appointed person, but those staff members downstream, then often you can take that outside game, which is always necessary and always drives the work, but you can kind of pair it with a little more nuanced inside game that's informed by some relationships and the kind of information you get from people when they let their guard down and they feel like they can connect with you a little bit more and don't have the political guardrails up.
So a big thing that we are now realizing more and more.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to add something also. Build the relationships with your elected officials, but also build relationships with people who are doing work in other movement sectors, such as housing, people who are, doing work around, reentry and incarceration, and public safety, because all of these things they're connected. They're connected, to cannabis. And one thing I noticed, especially when I was out on the East Coast doing work with Mary, is that it was just a lot of cannabis people, but actually the people who are doing that work, cannabis is going to cross anyway. So even if you are not in the cannabis space and you are doing movement work or organizing in those sectors, start to connect with people in cannabis now, because you all can support each other. And actually, we need y'all support because there's not enough cannabis advocates, and I'm talking specifically to the East Coast people, to support that work. There's a lot of work that has to be done in housing for people to be able to consume and smoke. So if you are, someone that is, on the NYCHA side, then you need to come and help, folks like Jason, Mary, and other people. And so I just wanted to add that because that's something that we really forget. It's not just one fight. This is something that it impacts us all, and we should all be included.
So let's talk about this, because this is something that everybody's now, maybe not everybody, some people, lobbying. What is lobbying when you are from the perspective of where you sit currently in the industry? And I'd love for Drakari and Lanese to chime in here. Jason, Chaney, Drakari, Lanese, let's chime in on that. Like, lobbying, what does that look like given what you do in this space and for the issues that you care about, given how this is rolling out, no matter where you live, especially right now?
I'll start, yeah. So for sure, Jason and Chaney, you guys touched on some really, really important pieces when it comes to connecting with those people in power. And lobbying essentially is influencing those who help make policy and legislation by getting involved in, you can do it by getting involved in like your nearest neighborhood association or benefits district organization, or you can get involved in a nonprofit that may be doing the groundwork, and it may not specifically be groundwork for cannabis, but it's groundwork for some other underlying issues that may be happening in your community or neighborhoods. So, for example, I'm an equity owner and operator of a retail cannabis space, and I don't necessarily have, I don't have a lot of time, but whatever time I do have, I connect with my one of my mentors. His name is they call him Uncle Damien, and he runs a couple nonprofit organizations, has his own equity cannabis line, and one of his nonprofits is called Us for Us, and they're out on the street. He's literally posting 3 or 4 events a day of him giving back to the community by feeding the homeless, organizing PPE supplies to give out to low-income housing, working on clothing drives, toy drives, always just trying to stay active. And once you get involved as an operator, when you get involved with things like that, you show that you care. You're not just about a buck, and that you understand that your business gives you a voice. Your business gives you the power or a say so, and you need to be able to back up your values and back up what you say that you're all about. You need to be able to do that with your actions, and you do that by participating on the ground level, and not thinking that you're above everyone just because you own a business. It's, as a business owner, you have a huge responsibility to lead by example in your community, and the way that you do that is you dedicate the time that you do have and figure out how you can use that to better the community around you and make an impression. So
Thank you, Chaney. I know we're pressed for time, so I'd love for you to go second with your thoughts on lobbying.
Yeah, we all lobby in our own way. I don't consider myself a lobbyist, although the work that I do, I end up doing lobbying, right? But it's not enough. What the cannabis industry is missing for representatives like us is actual lobbyists that can lobby for us on a federal level. I feel like we're the small guys, right? And we don't have that power. So one of the barriers of why we're not getting equity day one or certain legislation with legalization is because we don't have someone championing for us on that level that can get into the rooms with these, Congress people, and senators. We are all individually doing our own work and organizational work by having, lobby days or whatnot. It does make a difference. I'm not saying it doesn't. It does make a difference. I'm just talking about the difference between, the actual lobbyists and the work that we do. On the level of lobbying that we are all doing is communicating, again, locally with our elected officials, whether it's city, it's statewide. I feel it's taken, some years, but finally we're able to, be in spaces and communicate with certain Congress folks like, Barbara Lee. But again, what I would like to see, down the line is for grassroots organizations in cannabis having more political power by having actual lobbyists that can represent what we actually are trying to lobby for when it comes to equity and inclusion in cannabis.
Thank you. Lanese.
Hey everyone. Yeah, so much stuff has been said. I think I'll just pick up real fast where Chaney just left off, and they were talking about actual lobbyists. And I always joke that the difference between a community organizer and a lobbyist is that one gets paid. And then if I was going to go deeper than that and explain why one gets paid versus the other, and I could start with systemic racism, but what I would break down with that meaning is access to certain spaces. It's the currency is relationships. So you can understand a topic really well and be an expert on it, but do you have relationships? I feel like lobbying is one of those jobs where it really requires someone with a decent emotional intelligence to really be able to assess themselves. If you walk into a room consistently and no one knows you, you're not ready to be a lobbyist. You don't have relationships. If your mantra is no new friends, keep my squad tight to 2, you're not ready to be a lobbyist. A lobbyist is about a collection and series of relationships that you can that don't really become transactional, that transformational. And if you understand lots of the ways that money works, it's that if you come up in similar social economic demographics, then what's going to happen is, you're going to one group of people can enter spaces like corporate jobs, like government jobs or whatever, and then they will make relationships. So for example, me, I got into organizing around Occupy. That's when I moved to Oakland and I learned about organizing. Before that, I thought it was all about organizing closets and keeping your stuff together. Then I learned it meant something else. The folks I met at my first ever internship back in 2011, now they're directing agencies. Now they're leading programs. Now they're leading businesses and departments. We came up together in a particular way. I can lobby. There's not too many spaces that I can't get, there's many spaces I can't get into, but if I assess myself on the jurisdiction, I know where I'm all up in that, or, oh, I don't have the access. So at first I would say, actually understand what a lobbyist is. It's someone who has a lot of relationships. So if you don't already have a lot of relationships, what you're gonna be doing? Probably losing. If you have relationships, it's still gonna be hard to win. So then when we transfer over from that is understanding like what you need, the how to be able to execute, not the what, but the how. Then you start thinking about the what. I'll be like, there's 3 things that are hella important. You gotta, and I'll dig deep into them, I'll say it off top, the first 3. Be kind, be helpful, be dependable. Be kind doesn't mean not to tell the truth. Be kind doesn't mean to say, hey, there's money missing. Be kind doesn't mean to say that, hey, this policy is going to negatively impact Black communities or disabled communities or trans communities. That's not what be kind means. Be kind doesn't mean lie. But just like you think you're a public servant working for the greater of humanity, so do these people. And they happen to be humans. And you go in there yelling. When was the last time someone yelled at you and you were like, oh, right, I need to change my ways? Probably was like, motherfucker, bitch ass, blah, 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 you know? So the idea is like, do you want to be right or do you want to win? So be kind. These people, whether they know it or not, they think they're public servants, and you have to play to their ego and be straight and direct. I know that you care about humanity. I know that. I could tell when you talk to me you have to get to know people. So then I would say be helpful. The second one, be an informed political operative, because at the end of the day, like you, so for example, there's folks in Oakland, there's council members who are like, they would say Lanese can whip a vote. What does that mean? It means that half the people that they talk to that go in there for them don't do that. What do I mean by whipping a vote? Well, there's certain things where not everyone can't be talking to each other. And so if I go in there and I'm just like, bet, I got 4 votes. Or we need, you're the last one. If you come out, you won't be alone looking stupid. We got you. I got the votes. That's being helpful, because there's things that you can do. I can talk to everyone who's a decision maker. I can let people know where the votes are at. I can also let people know where the block is at. If I'm there to listen and not rant on my soapbox, if I'm there to listen, I can catch what the block is. And then I can let the person know who's trying to be the accelerator or the champion, a way to try and maneuver that. Whip a vote, write policy, do the research. And then again, be dependable. So, I mean, this is something that we were supposed to have learned in kindergarten. But again, if you're one of those people who, like, your ex is always telling you about you don't do what you say you're going to do, or that you flip-floppy, again, lobbyist is not the job for you. Go find someone who's everyone's dependable, because at the end of the day, you need to be someone who can only share accurate information. If you somebody who don't know, who likes to not read the actual bill of a text and then read the New York Post and then think you're an expert and will start talking, being a lobbyist is not for you. If you're a person who actually likes to go to the direct source and read for yourself, lobbyist, that's for you. Also, if you're someone who no one tells secrets to, lobbyist, not for you. This is about holding information and being able to have folks be confident in that. So I would say, again, be kind. Do you want to be right or do you want to win? Be dependable. Do what you say you will do, and be helpful. Be an informed political operative. And most above all, have a self-assessment. Are you actually the one to be the lobbyist?
Thank you, Lanese, for reading the fuck out of us.
That was not a drag. I don't even know any of you. That's not a drag.
I know, but I just felt, I know I'm not that problem, but I felt read too. Chaney's gonna have to leave soon. Jason, before you answer, Chaney, can you say where people can find you? I know you gotta go. Thank you for your time. I think Lanese actually shut it down, Jason. I don't think you want to follow up after that. I'm gonna give you something different. But Chaney, where can folks find you?
Woo, okay. I'm in tears. This is Lisa, like what? That's how Lanese communicates. It's just straight to the point. I mean, honestly, there's really nothing for me to say after that in regards, to lobbying. If folks want to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Chaney Turner. You can find me on Clubhouse, not capping, at Chaney Turner. Don't follow me on Facebook. I don't respond to fan requests there. And you can also find me on Instagram at social_life. But on a serious note, thank you all for for this. This is a great conversation. And again, everybody doesn't need to be a lobbyist. Everybody doesn't need to actually be in the cannabis space, but you can still advocate for it. You can still advocate for it. You don't even have to use cannabis, but you can still advocate for it. And we need as much advocates as we can, especially y'all out there in New York. Help these people. And thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna go with a new question. There are people actually loading in questions into Q&A. Jason, I will kind of ask you this question, and Drakari, if you can talk about this, like people are talking about they want to own a business. They want to be involved. They want to have a piece of this. When it comes to knowing what legislation or regulations are telling you and what you have to look at as a business owner, Drakari and Jason, if you can talk about that, that'd be great for people that are kind of like, well, I'm gonna open a dispensary. And it's like, well, can you? Because look at what this thing says here. And, you know, Drakari, if you can talk about what you had to do to get ready for that after Jason talks about how to read through legislation to understand that, that'd be great. So Jason, please start.
Yeah, I was laughing because I was the other person on that side of the table being lobbied, and everything Lanese said, from stroking my ego until having something to offer, just is please, if you take nothing from that, clip that, write it down, take notes. Like, that was the whole presentation in a nutshell. But to answer your question, Mary, I think it goes without saying, you got to look at what the market's going to look like, right? You know, that's where can you get in? What does the supply chain look like? You know, in New York, there's mostly a ban on a prohibition on vertical integration. So you're thinking about, you know, what's the business type? Obviously, the location. You know, in New York, are you in the city or an urban environment? Do you have space and land for cultivation? And what, you know, does the retail environment look like, you know, where you are? So you got to make some big decisions about what kind of business you, you know, want to be in based on what the language of the statute provides for. And if you are wanting to get in as an early mover under social equity program, you know, what does that look like in terms of license opportunities, but also in terms of things like access to capital, technical assistance, support, and the like, that go along with being able to apply early. So I definitely would look at that in the legislation and try to parse out, you know, what the market is, or at least what the policymakers think the market should look like, and how they've tried to capture that in the first instance. And then I'd also, you know, look at timing. Some of that you can read from the language and trying to think about, okay, sequentially, what happens on April the 1st or June or July 1, or whenever that bill becomes effective, and how does the policy, the legislation, the language sort of set out how the market's going to go, be developed. You know, what happens first, what happens next, what's the timeline? But a lot of that in New York, I think, is going to be left to regulation. So I think it's important to look at like what practically happened in states that have legalized. How long did it take for the office to get set up? When actually was there staffing to do outreach on early license applications and potentially early social equity programming? Because I think all of those things are important as you start to sequence, like, what do I need to do as a potential entrepreneur to be ready for application, and then if I'm successful, to have a strong business plan to launch.
Thank you. Drakari, can you talk about that as a business owner?
Yeah. So, you know, being in California, it was legalized in 2018. And, you know, I specifically remember before this, I was actually managing and helping own bars with the same business partners that I have now. And I remember I was on vacation actually in Thailand, and my business partner sends me basically a book of all of the regulations from the BCC, Bureau of Cannabis Control, and basically that was my vacation. While I was on vacation, I had to read this entire book, and while I was doing it, I didn't necessarily. I mean, I knew the reason why I needed to read it was to know what is legal and legal in this new industry. But I didn't think that it was that important. But since we've been open for the last year, there have definitely been some learning lessons. And so I would say to prepare yourself to open up a business, any business in general, but specifically cannabis, is you need to know the rules and regulations inside and out, because it's super easy to get yourself caught up. And you may make one minor mistake that builds and builds over years or months, and once you get audited, then it's a wrap for you, and you lost everything that you invested is gone. So being able to understand that and take the time to do your homework and research the exact laws that you're going to have to follow is key and important. Also, learning, a lot of people think that cannabis is this booming business, and yes, it is. And mostly it's because it's so new. There's so much growth that still needs to happen. There's so much opportunity left in cannabis. It's at its infancy right now. And so with that, you have to understand like things like the taxes, and so people think that we're as dispensary owners or cannabis business operators, that we're making all this money, but all of that money, if you're doing this legally and correctly, all of that money is going back to the government, and it's all because of taxes. If you look at the 280E tax law, basically what that does is it prevents any cannabis business or business that operates around a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 substance. They cannot write off. They can't write off anything of their taxes besides their cost of goods sold. Now you have some businesses, cannabis businesses, that figure out their way around it or maneuver around it by creating management entities that are like, hey, well, this entity actually manages our staff, so therefore we can write that off. But in the end, it's still tax evasion. If you got audited, no matter how you put it, that's tax evasion, and that's a wrap for your business. So, we came in, we knew about 280E, but we didn't know how real it was until filing this year's taxes and realizing how much we actually are having to pay back to the government. And it's a ridiculous amount. It's extremely hard to make any money right now as a cannabis business operator. And if you are making money legally with no gray area, then definitely please reach out to me and tell me how you're doing it, because we are doing very well here, and the business is thriving. But like I said, a majority of those revenues have to go back into the business or back to the government. So know what you're getting yourself into, and understand that you need to have the if it's a industry like cannabis, you need to be able to have the bandwidth and the patience to know that this is an investment. You're not going to reap the benefits for years, and you have to survive that long as well. So don't put yourself through hell knowing that you're not going to be able to survive that long.
Thank you. And Lanese, given the early work that Hood Incubator started with, having to coach people through a business level into their interest in cannabis, and you do have stellar people that have done your program, like Amber Center, and a lot of folks who are, doing their thing years later. When you talk about this, along with matching the need to understand all this stuff, right? Like lobbying, civic justice, you reading the shit out of us about how we need to conduct ourselves. Can you talk about that marriage when you're an entrepreneur thinking about coming into the business, just based on what Drakari said here?
So I just want to clarify that Amber Center is their own entrepreneurial boss person, human, and we just work together. But I unfortunately can't say they came out of our business accelerator. That would be amazing if I could, though.
My correction. I'll be putting people together because it's like they're in vogue, but they're still together and all the members still like are making money. My bad.
No. But I would say, so to give some context, in 2017 and 2018, we ran a business accelerator. From that experience, we dealt with a handful, I mean, I guess about 30, so that's more than a handful of businesses. Flash forward, so we paused it in 2019, 2020. We're thinking about bringing it back. The reason why we paused it is because we realized the challenges that people had running the business wasn't challenges that they were challenges, how do I say it? The challenges that people have running a business in the cannabis industry is the same reason why we have accelerators and incubators in general. It's that our American system is set up that it's pretty hostile to small businesses. So we really think about what an incubator or an accelerator is. And even though we can look at it and be like, they're not diverse, they have all these white people and all these men people, but at the end of the day, it in and of itself, an accelerator is diversity because it is a disruption to the status quo of business. It literally is a direct service tool program to help small businesses grow, whether it be white people or men people. And that's just in general, like accelerators are that. And so when we really assessed what it was that was holding people back in the cannabis industry, we realized there's a space between, there's things you can buy. And so like if or pay for, I'm saying. So you sell enough weed, you can pay for a lawyer, you can pay for an accountant, you can pay for someone who do marketing. So those things aren't things that were intrinsic to holding people back. And so we were like, well, what is it? Like, like what is it then? We're not going to be the master accelerator because there's other folks that are already good at doing accelerators. And I would say, we realized we had folks that had, the cannabis permit businesses, but then were literally homeless, got homeless with the cannabis permit, or cannabis permit, but not able to vote on a ballot initiative that would help with their local tax burden, and a whole slew of things. And that we really realized is that, even though it was mainly the consumers and small businesses that drove legalization in all these jurisdictions, once it comes time for who our electeds and decision makers listen to, it's not the same body. And so I would say, as far as that was the challenge I saw. And so but our business accelerator in general, we have folks that have one dispensary licenses, we have folks that are on deliveries, we have folks that are a part of the shared kitchen. There's in Oakland, like they really are thriving with some of the programs that maybe not thriving. Like I don't want to lie, like Drakari, they're thriving in the sense of a staleness that is a little bit of the market with the challenges. So I would just say back to the business aspects of like the regulations being the overtaxation, the combination of the 280E, and then in California you have a state 15% excise tax, and then a local level is another tax, and then there's like all these volatile other issues. I think I would there's really the thing to say about lobbying on that. I mean, that is really is just I mean that's the survivor shit. Can you outlast, outwit, and outplay? Like and you really have to take a strong look at that, because I do have worries that some people aren't doing what Drakari said. And because they are not doing that, they're taking something that they said was supposed to create them generational wealth, and they're losing their grandma's house. And that just kind of sounds like that wasn't the goal.
Thank you for stating that. Go ahead, Jason.
Can I just add one thing? Because I want to circle that back to just one comment I made about, it's important to look at how social equity is being supported in the legislation on the front end. And it was looking at, California specifically, and thinking about the things that Lanese highlighted that were missing, that government has a responsibility to fill the gap for, not an accelerator, because you can only get a person to a point, and then there's all these structural things. that are barriers that government has a responsibility for. So while we're still having this conversation in New York, I do think it's very important. You know, we give tens of millions of dollars to hospital corporations and executives. We just gave immunity to nursing homes in our budget for COVID-19. There's money in the budget. I know we're looking at, you know, some people say up to 15 billion, some people say 6, but I don't believe in that scarcity mindset. And I do think it's important, based on what we've learned in other jurisdictions, that number, I mean, that back end equity, that tax revenue, that community reinvestment should be something that's non-negotiable. But I think it's also important that the state pony up a lot of money early, so that social equity doesn't just become words on a page that we pretend don't exist in the system of runaway capitalism and income and wealth inequality that we're necessarily having to build this industry in. And I think that's a big opportunity for New York, for industry and advocates to come together and say, we need to put a number on what it's actually going to take. And that money needs to be given unencumbered to social equity applicants, not a loan, but just reparations for what has been taken from community and from individuals in community. So I just wanted to add that point.
Absolutely. There's a restorative, reparative justice that we need to do for sure. So I think that that's important. And I do want to get the questions, and everyone, I would like to state, Lanese, I'm going to get you an iPhone stand.
I don't have an iPhone, so that's not going to be helpful.
Whatever you got, I'm going to get it. Okay. I'm going to get to questions. Again, questions, not statements. I'm going to pull a Jacoby here. He is my favorite person to watch when he does this. I am taking everything from the school of ask a question, not a statement, the Holland School of Moderating. So if you have a question, put it in the Q&A box, not the chat. The Q&A box, not the chat. Erica Diaz, question. I work with a budding nonprofit looking to expand the presence of femmes of color in the industry, from agriculture to sales, etc. Okay, Erica. We don't necessarily think of ourselves as lobbyists, but inroads and connections are important. And we have a huge issue down here in South Florida. Yeah, you do. When it comes to creating these relationships, because we are often brushed off from the bat. What suggestions can we give Erica in terms of getting attention for those in power when they don't seem to agree with what you do, even though it's important? I can chime in here with a suggestion, but I'd love for our panelists to take a stab at this.
I mean, I don't know Florida or South Florida that much, but I would just say, like, I usually, like, my approach is classic, you know, classic, like, being Machiavelli, keep your friends closer, enemies closer. Who are these people that they are listening to? And, you know, have some tea with them, smoke a bowl with them. Don't even, like, be griping about the shit that you don't like about them, because you have to create a situation. That's for the 4th conversation, the 5th conversation. A lot of folks don't understand. They think because I talk to many people, they think I like everyone. I don't like half the people I'm talking to. I'm doing my job. And to do my job, I have to be kind. And I remember this other term that's kind of weird and maybe slavery-ish, but you can't whip someone you're not close to. Literally, the term that you hear on the Senate floor is about, did they whip the vote? You think they whipped a vote from someone they never talked to? You think they whipped a vote from someone you never laughed with or cried with, or, you know, had a shit night with? You guys drank too much. That was some of the best people you have your co-conspirators with. Remember last night? No, we can't talk about that. Boom. Now you got your votes going through. I'm being silly, but I'm being serious. So identify who, if they're not listening to you, who are they listening to? And then that needs to be your new best friend.
That's real. And, you know, one of the things that we found successful at Cannabis is we are a team of people that, like, care about this issue, and we care about building community. Like, I made it a point to connect with people like Lanese first before I even got to know Jason Starr, and to bring those issues about what's happening with, like, what Chaney's saying, Lanese is saying to Jason, so that they're aware that there's people that look like them or look like us that need support, that deserve support, that have clear business models, that understand the space, that have been in the space. Because when you're a melanated person and the number is still 4.3% of Black ownership, or even less for those that are Latina, and even more problematic for those that are Asian, and even lesser and lesser and wilder for women, talking about these issues and caring about an equitable industry is important for all of us. We all have to make this a thing that we do. So finding a way to amplify your voice, finding a way to drive campaigns, finding a way to support those who need to be supported is important as well. And if you want to follow us at Cannabis, that's what we do. We've done it for Massachusetts. We help lead a boycott, which actually drove some change in certain ways for what they needed with their delivery provisions for equity folks. So that stuff is definitely possible. Last question, y'all. I said ask questions, y'all didn't ask it. I got one. That's it. And then we gonna go and do nothing because we in a panini press, AKA a Panera Bread / a pandemic. So this is what it is. Joe Whipple, he has this very at the actor studio question. What really interests me are post-licensing steps and initial steps companies take when it comes to designing a commercial facility. Oftentimes this happens during and after the lobbying process. And from my experience, it's full of expensive mistakes. And I think Jason highlighted this as well a little bit. Ownership groups are willing to throw money around when it comes to politics, but they don't bring in experienced eyes to talk about these things when it comes to bill crafting and designing these items. What are thoughts when it comes to this disconnect from ownership groups and getting experienced teams from the get-go to provide real insights on crafting bills at work? Anybody got, oh, Jason, I mean, you got 3 degrees, so you got to take it.
That don't mean nothing. I'm a little, I don't exactly know that I'm picking up what is meant by ownership groups, but I will say in New York, and I'm just gonna probably offend some people, there were a lot of people, a lot of them, purportedly wealthy white men who came to me and were like, oh, I was making widgets in Missouri 2 years ago, and then I heard about this thing, and now I'm working for ABC, multi-state operator, and can I take you out to dinner? And I'm like, have you read the lobbying rules? Unless it's less than $12, no, and I don't want nothing to eat less than $12 from you. But stuff like that. So there, if I'm picking up where you're putting down, there is this class of people who are just you have a title and you certainly can pay for access, but you don't seem to, know anything. And I always said I was missing when I was in government and I was able to create those pathways. I would always say we're missing an industry lobby, industry trade association group that actually knows what they're doing, because the sort of industry trade presence in Albany is, sort of people who, had money and have, I think, sort of capitalized some of these businesses, but have not the faintest idea how to run their own business, let alone a cannabis business. And then there's all these people that I met, like Mary, right? Like Cannaclusive, like Revel, where I was like, oh, wow, these are the people that actually know what's happening. So I see, it's in New York, I can't say this elsewhere, a real kind of opportunity and opening for, again, going back to challenging the premise of your question, Joe, lobbying never ends, because if lobbying is really about meaningful relationship development and building, then there is a space in New York right now for the people who look like this, who are operators, and I'm not an operator and don't really want to be an operator, to really hold space in New York over the long term, to come back on top of the advocates who really knew how to make stuff happen in New York, to fill that space post the bill passing, to really be there to inform the regulatory process and all the changes that we know are going to need to happen to keep this thing moving after April 1st or July 1, as it were.
I don't know why Lanese raised Lanese's hand at an event that she's talking at. Thank you, Jason. But Lanese, you have something to say with your little yellow hand raised?
Yes, yes. So I was just thinking about Ricardo said, you know, like you get these shit bills passed, and then you got to do all the work to fix it. And I was thinking about a situation that happened here in Oakland, and basically that situation was, you know, back in 2016, 2017, I had a list of things that I said should happen as far as equity. And then there was the mainstream folks that the folks who were decision makers were actually listening to. And so on this topic, my influence at the time wasn't great enough. And so I said, all right, you know, some folks who were upset, they decided to go ways of being like, F you and yeah. I decided to go the way of let's get some drinks and talk to each other. So fast forward, you know, 12 months later, whatever, these folks, the folks who thought they could just, you know, bulldoze their way to what they needed, realized they had some issues. And now they needed to get some things changed. And it was the taxes that Chaney talked about, how we got the taxes lowered. How did we get the taxes lowered? Well, because the same people who thought they could just bulldoze what they wanted at one point in time, then realized things weren't going that well for them and they needed to move something. And now I was able to, because I had built enough relationships and I do my job as a lobbyist as listening, I was able to identify what they needed. And I was like, all right, bet. That's great. I get that. You know, that's important. You know what I need is this. And so what I put together was the equity tax rebate program we put together, which was we attached a business's profitability to a reinvestment in the community and diversity in the industry, meaning that if we identified 7 different equity activities, from hiring to paying living wage to having a diverse supply chain, like your shelf being diverse, to how much you paid someone. So it was 7 different equity activities. And if a businesses did that and could show proof of receipt, then they would get a tax rebate. Understanding what businesses actually care about. And then attaching that, because so now they got what they wanted, which was the issue of the taxes going down. And we were able to push through some equity things that were like, hey, you can have a permit, but doesn't mean anyone's going to play with you, which is a real thing. Because if someone gives, if someone treats a Black business and is like minimum 1,000 in cash on delivery, but they're like, oh, Steve, oh, that's my homie. We went to preschool together. I love Steve. Steve, you got net 90, and you can get 100 units at a time. We had to figure out ways to combat that type of stuff. And so what I say to that is that there's no permanent friends or enemies, and there's no permanent position. Like there's no permanent positioning as far who is your friend or your enemy. And so those people who were pushing things through in the beginning and acting like they didn't need you could be the same people that you can leverage to get through what you want to get through all along. And I would say some folks that they were enjoying whatever I talked about earlier, like the reading or whatever, is really not reading, but I would say, just want to share with everyone, we have this program called the Cannabis Justice Accelerator. It's a 20-week political training program for cannabis justice activists like yourself, folks that are interested. We go through political history, we go through technical skills, and we go through actual understanding policy. And so this is a program for folks who want to lean in. And I would say, you come to the Cannabis Justice Accelerator. Yes, you can run a cannabis, you'll be able to leave winning with enough tools to run and win a cannabis campaign, but you'll also be able to run a campaign to change the lunch program at your school, or to stop the library from being closed in your neighborhood, or to bring back a supermarket in your neighborhood. So these skills that we teach in our Cannabis Justice Accelerator are transferable to our whole lives.
And I want to also say that the Cannabis Justice Accelerator has different hubs across the nation that'll be coming. One of them will be in New York and New Jersey. Hello. But we have now come to a close in our program, and we're only going to be able to have people talk about where you can find them. If you're going to bother them, you might want to pay for their time. I just want to put that out there. Don't be hitting nobody up. If you're trying to open a business and they're running a business, you should pay for their time because they got the business. So just putting that out there because it matters. And thank you for those who have stuck around. I'm going to get to final closing remarks. I will have Drakari, Lanese, and Jason go, and then Jacoby has a closing announcement. So let's make this fast. We are running over time, and I apologize for that, but thank you so much. This has been really amazing.
Yeah, I would also like to, thank you for having me on the Revel, and Lulu, of course, thank you for inviting me personally. And you guys can find me. I'm here at the shop every single day. So if you want to come by and you're in San Francisco in California, come on by, ask for Dre or Drakari, and I'll come out and say what's up. But if you want to look for me on social media, you can follow me on Instagram at Drakari with 2 I's and an underscore, or you can just reach out to our company page, Cal Street Canico.
Lanese?
Lanese, the Hood Incubator on the Instagram and the Facebook, I believe. There's a Twitter, but it's used even less than the other ones. I have a personal LinkedIn. Oh, I have a LaneseMartin.com if you want to check me out. Yeah, I would say though, really, I'm not really big on social media. The best way to actually get in touch with me is get in touch with someone that I talk to. Practice your lobbying, and see if you can't get a hold of me in person, then you're probably not gonna be able to get a hold of Senator Schumer. So yeah, I don't really do that well, but okay. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Lanese. Jason?
How am I supposed to go? How can I follow that? Lanese was like, call my people, and if you don't know them, then you ain't gonna get in touch with me. Lesson number 1. Jason, E as in Edward, Starr, 2 R's, across all social media. Like Chaney, don't hit me up on Facebook because I don't accept friend requests there. And I just encourage all of you who are in New York, first chance to dip your toe into the lobbying pool. If you are a newbie, is this Wednesday. The Start SMART coalition. SMART stands for Sensible Marijuana Access to Regulated Trade, which is over 200 organizations that have been fighting for cannabis justice in New York since 2013. Is holding virtual lobby day on March 5th. So I think that's Wednesday or Thursday, don't quote me, but SMART NY, SMART-NY.com. You can find out all the information and certainly get signed up and exercise some of that lobbying muscle that Lanese coached us on earlier. So it's been wonderful.
Thank you, Jason. And Jacoby and Lulu?
What's up, everybody? We'll make it quick. I just wanted to thank you all, and somebody had to thank Mary for holding it down. This woman, I just want everybody to know, had to take 2 phone calls at the same time as our prep meeting and was still able to make it all happen. I think, what you mean you're going to be on another call while we're doing our prep Zoom? But she was able to make it happen. We appreciate you. We appreciate Cannabis for working with us to do this. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We will be doing another series next month, just featuring a bunch of dope women to see if you have what it takes to run a cannabis business. So we're talking about cultivation, manufacturing and processing, retail. We're going to be talking about what's going on in New York in pockets because there's going to be a lot of heat for the next couple of weeks. But everything that Jason said, March 3rd, I think I sent the link in there. So please be a part of this. Lulu, shout out to you too. Thanks for herding the cats. I know even myself as your partner, you got to like remind me to come into things. So much appreciated. Do you want to say anything before we turn it over to Oscar?
Yeah, I just want to say join us in March because we're going to get some in-depth ground truth from really amazing women-owned operators in cannabis about what it really takes to run a cannabis business. So hope to see you all then.
One more thing before you start, Oscar. Yo, Lanese was dropping fire all day, just all day, like nonstop. I had to say it.
You guys are really fine. And thank you for inviting me.
Of course. All right, DJ, take it away, man. Thank you, everybody.